my challenge to every single one of you out there is to try something today. Today, what we tried is I wanted to do 5 episodes back to back, do them live, have them edited, and produced right away, right in front of your eyes. I wanted to take the risk, and guess what? We're on episode number 5 right now. So if you want to go back and you want to listen to and check them out, the playlists, we've created the playlist on Spotify and on YouTube, Wisdom in the Vibe. And then we also have You Have to Meet My Friends, where I go live and I call my friends randomly, and they don't know that they're going to be on the podcast, but they end up being on anyway, which is amazing. It's funny as could be. And then we have interviews with some of the most iconic people in the world. What I am explaining is, if you're checking out the podcast for the very first time, I want to thank you. My name is Kelly Cardenas. And I wanted to think about the podcast as a little bit different, not just one little thing, but I wanted to create almost a television station where we start to have some fun. We take risks, we try things out, and if it works, we keep doing it. If it sucks, we stop doing it. And we want to know. I thank you so much. I thank you for your comments, for your subscriptions, for all the things that you're doing, and I appreciate you at the highest level. This episode is one of the episodes entitled the Wisdom in the Vibe. Is in that playlist. It's called Inchstones, and we think about little tiny things that we could do. These episodes are about 10 to 15 minutes, sometimes 20, depending, but we go through the corresponding proverb, corresponding day, and it's amazing because even though I'm reading the exact same Proverbs 12 on the 12th of every single month, it reads different because I'm in a different place. Now, what I want to encourage you with, too, is that I've said that I'm not a Bible scholar, although I've been studying it for over 30 years. This is just my interpretation of it. But what I would suggest is that you read the Word, because when you read the Word, it'll start to read you. And I don't read it from a religious standpoint, from a ritual standpoint. I read it simply from a relationship standpoint. And I want to gain wisdom. I want to look to like where the wisdom comes from. And you can imagine, if you were to be able to sit down with, say, like a Warren Buffett. If you got to sit down with him and get financial advice from him and listen to him and listen to his wisdom, would you apply it? If you got to sit down with some, Bezos, or you got to sit down with Elon Musk, you got to sit down. Now, I'm not saying that you would, with Elon, that you would do everything that he was doing, but when it comes to actual business and growing, would you listen and would you apply it? It's incredible because we have a source that's absolutely free, which was written 3,000 years ago, and that's what we're going through in today and, in the episodes of Inchstones. So we do the corresponding proverb, corresponding day. It's Proverbs 12, 3,000-year-old wisdom. Today, the first verse in this blew me away. It showed me that God has a personality and that he has a sense of humor. And I think a lot of times the way that we view a relationship with God is a lot of times the way that we view a person that was in our life that maybe spoke about God, or the way that we came in contact. And the reason why I'm saying this, because a lot of times when we have an overbearing parent that's like, oh, you better do this, you're going to be damned if you do this, you think that God is that, and he's not. He's just love. He's just love. He's patience. He's peace. And he wants to love you exactly where you're at. He has no judgment on you. He wants to lift you up. He doesn't want to, I'm going to teach you the lesson and let you go through. No. He wants to love you right through it and wants to walk with you, but he also wants you to lean on him. He wants you to lean on his wisdom. So in this, the reason why I say about the personality and the sense of humor is because the very first verse of Proverbs 12, it says, don't be stupid. And I heard this throughout my life, like, don't be stupid. But most of the time, people wouldn't define stupid. They'd be like, don't be stupid, kid. And then they wouldn't define it. Well, it's great because he broke it down. And so he gave me the list of what's smart and what's stupid. And then just said, don't be stupid. Why don't you say we get this party started?
On my mind, I got 2 shines, so every day I climb. Work in the morning, work in the evening. We's achieving, cause we believing. It's for certain, we put the work in. We ain't stopped just because it's hurting. Right before your eyes, so it's coming to no surprise. The takeover is televised. Over and over and over again. Make no mistake, we continue to win. Defeat never know, cause I will not lose. They wanna
to check out the Vibe Room, July 23rd. Thank you to Mr. Justin Williams, Patrick Packer, Kevin Borland, our alliance partners there. July 23rd is a live version of the podcast, and it's coming soon to Carlsbad also. But July 23rd is going to be in Salt Lake City at the Edison House. I got Mr. Roy Tuscany, special guest, special musical guest, Miguel Mendoza. It's going to be absolutely phenomenal. Roy is the founder of the High Fives Foundation, helping spinal cord injury victims to adapt and then destroy and create experiences all over the world. He's got one of the top nonprofits in the world, and this guy is an absolute beast. Incredible friend, and we're gonna have so much fun. Mr. James Dixon is gonna be there also. It will be a night that you won't want to miss. Very limited tickets. We're almost sold out. Actually, we'll probably sell out today. So just wanted to thank you all for your support, and I wanted to thank you guys for tuning into the podcast. The greatest compliment you could ever give me is to listen to it like you're doing now, or watch it. If you're on Spotify or YouTube, make sure you subscribe. Same thing with Apple. Leave a review and then share it with your friends. That's simple. It's very, very simple. Just do that. Someone needs to hear this today, exactly where they're at. So today's episode is all about don't be stupid. I heard this throughout my life, but a lot of times I didn't get the definition of it. And it left me to think like, okay, well, is that stupid? Is that stupid? Is that stupid? I don't know. And this was it's a overarching, like, don't be stupid. Well, that's a very simple statement. I don't want to be stupid. And sometimes our stupidity comes from our ignorance. Ignorant is just not knowing. Stupid, right, is knowing and not doing. So don't be stupid. But our stupid comes from ignorance. So how can we become wise and not be ignorant? Ignorant is just not being aware of something. How can we become aware of it? It's by studying wisdom. I joked the other day and with my, I was sitting in the morning and I was like, what if I did an episode? And I spent some time on a podcast and I was like, oh, what if I did all the things that like Warren Buffett would do? And I gave that and I listed them all down. And then I gave the guy who's not Warren Buffett, who maybe hasn't done the greatest things financially. And I'm not saying that Warren Buffett's the greatest man in the world. I'm just saying financially he's done pretty darn good. And imagine if I took a person who didn't do well financially and I just compared and contrasted those two against each other. You would be like, choose Warren Buffett. It'd just be an easy decision. But a lot of times we haven't taken the time to understand. Right? So we're ignorant to those things. And I was ignorant to it a lot of times because I wasn't looking to wisdom. I wasn't looking to foundational. I wasn't looking to principle. It's like business, right? So if we start a business is nothing more than doing a bunch of small tasks in a timely manner. That's all business is. Business also is people, right? So you have to have people. So if you build the people build the business, right? How do we get the people to want to be built? We create an irresistible vibe. How do we do that? Take your heart set, your mindset, and your skill set, put them in line. You'll create an irresistible vibe. All these things are very simple to me now because I've actually done them. How do we create a $1 million business, right? 7-figure business. Well, that's only $4,000 in revenue a day. On a 5-day work week, that's $20,000 a week, and 50 weeks in a year with 2 weeks off is $1 million. So it's 7 figures. How do we do that? $500 an hour. That's with the production that you would have to have on an 8-hour workday to be able to do it. Why is that? It's because I've done it multiple times. I've seen it. I know it, and it's an experience that I've had. So I'm not ignorant to those facts. I'm not ignorant to the fact of how to be able to create $1 million business. How can we create multiple? How can we do them in other states? How can we do them around the country? Well, I'm not ignorant to those facts because I've done it. So what God wants us to know is that he doesn't want us to be ignorant to these things, meaning that we don't have the knowledge of it. He wants to give us the knowledge, but to be able to give us the knowledge, he's got to impart wisdom into us first, which is the right use of knowledge. And where do we get that? It's from a fear of him or just a relationship with him. And when we fear him or respect him, it's amazing what can happen. So in Proverbs 12, it talks about don't be stupid. Imagine the benefits of not being stupid in your life. How many of you ever made a really stupid decision? I have. I'll wait. Nobody else raised their hand? I've made a lot of silly decisions, but you live with them, you grow with them, you take the lumps, and then you move on. There's been so many times in my life where I've made a stupid decision. Where did that stupid come from? From ignorance. And that ignorance came from just not knowing. Now, some people are like, no, just be nice to yourself. And it was stupid. Those things that I had done, now that I look at it, when I look back, right? So I learned this about expanding a business, but I learned it later on. So our first business was in Michigan, right? I didn't live in the state, but I lived in Las Vegas. So I opened up in Michigan. Then we opened up in Las Vegas. So these two are so far apart. Plus it wasn't close to the airport in Michigan. It was in Port Huron, Michigan, which you flew into Detroit and had to drive an hour and a half to be able to get there. That's a lesson learned. I was ignorant to that fact and ignorant to the fact that that would impact my business. Okay. So when I opened in Vegas, then my next location was in Chicago. So I got Michigan and I got Vegas and I got Chicago. And then we trade out Michigan for Chicago. So now I have Chicago and Vegas. Well, then my wife says, well, I want to live in San Diego. So we opened in San Diego. So I got San Diego, Vegas, and Chicago. These are all travel places. And then we open in downtown San Diego, which is like 40 minutes from Carlsbad. And then we open in Salt Lake. And then we open at the Hard Rock in Vegas. And we opened these businesses all over the place. And then after we had sold the company, I sat down with a mentor of mine named Van Council. And he said, you know what I do? And I said, what is it? Tell me. Give me the wisdom. He said, when I build a location that's producing what I want to produce, and I know exactly what that production is, I want for every 1,000 square foot, I want to do $1 million in business. What I do is I take a protractor and I get a map and I take a protractor and I do it to scale of 3 miles and I run the protractor around that location, 3 mile radius, and then I choose a location inside that 3 mile radius, and then we put another one there because it won't cannibalize the one that's already functioning, but it'll build the new one and it's easy to be able to manage. And then I continue to do this process until I dominate the whole entire city. Mind-blowing. I made stupid decisions, meaning that I opened in Michigan and Vegas and Chicago, in San Diego, in Carlsbad, in Salt Lake, and back in Vegas. When if I would have had the information, I would have sat down and done the protractor and just dominated. When I did Vegas, I would have dominated Vegas and had 9, 10, 15 locations just in Vegas alone. And how much easier would it have been, or simpler would it have been, to be able to manage locations that were that close? Unbelievable. But here was the things with Van. What he told me, it came from wisdom and it came from experience. What he told me is he had a target. He knew exactly how much he wanted to produce. He also knew his profit margin. He wanted to have a specific profit margin and a specific top line revenue. So when he did this, when he hit that million, he wanted to be at 18 to 20% profit margin. So when he hit that mark and he knew that it was at that indicator, what he did is he did the protractor. And then he created a location that was 3 miles out. And then he dominated the city of Atlanta. But that came from wisdom. It came from experience. Now, do I think that Van was completely void of stupid decisions? No, we've all made them. We're all making them. But make sure that you write them down and they become your systems as you move forward, because your systems are nothing more than a list of your screw-ups. And once people understand that part of it, productivity goes through the roof, innovation goes through the roof, and the ability to adapt immediately goes through the roof. And imagine if I had Van sit with me when I opened my first business. Now, I could probably tell you I wouldn't have listened to him because I was a young punk. But imagine if I would have, and I would have sat with his wisdom. It would have helped me to circumvent some stupid decisions. And what God is saying today is, don't be stupid, but I want to give you the roadmap of exactly how this can play out. In Proverbs 12, he listed it out, and it's crazy because 3,000 years ago, he knew exactly what you're going to be dealing with in today. So let's compare and contrast. Don't be stupid. What is smart? In verse 1, being smart is love, discipline, and knowledge. In verse 1, being stupid you hate correction. In verse number 2, being smart obtains favor from the Lord. In verse 2, stupid is wicked schemes. In verse 3 and 7, a smart decision would have a firm foundation. A stupid decision would have no foundation. In verse 4, a smart decision would have noble character. A stupid decision would be disgraceful. In verse 5, a smart decision would be just. A stupid decision would be deceitful. A smart decision in verse 6 would speak life. And in verse 6, a stupid decision would plot evil. In verse number 8, a smart decision has prudence, which is the thought of the future. And a stupid decision has a warped mind. In verse 9, a smart decision has diligence. In verse 9, 24, and 27, and a stupid decision is going to be faking the funk or having a big hat and no cattle or talking loud and saying nothing. A smart decision in verse 10 is going to be kind. A stupid decision is going to be cruel. A smart decision is to work your land in verse 11, and a stupid decision is to chase fantasies. A smart decision is looking to God in verse 12, and a stupid decision is looking to man to justify and to compare and to try and impress man. A smart decision in verse 13 is to do the right thing, and a stupid decision is silly talk. A smart decision in verse 14 is speak life and have diligent hands, doing right work. And that's in verse 14. In verse 15, a smart decision listens to advice, and a stupid decision doesn't listen. In verse 16 and 23, a smart decision has prudence, and a stupid decision is quick-tempered. In verse 17, a smart decision tells the truth, and a stupid decision lies. A smart decision in verse 18 and 20 speaks life, and a stupid decision is quick to speak. In verse 19, a smart decision endures forever, and a stupid decision is a flash in the pan. A smart decision is to promote peace and have joy in verse 20, and a stupid decision is to plot evil. In verse 21, a smart decision is to be protected, and a stupid decision creates calamity. A smart decision in verse 25 is cheerful, and a stupid decision is anxious. In verse 26, a smart decision is choose friends wisely, and a stupid decision is hangs out with boneheads. In verse 27, a smart decision is diligent, and a stupid decision is lazy. In verse 28, a smart decision has life and immortality. And I had a struggle with this at first because I thought of immortality, and this is what most of the time man has always looked at. How could I be more immortal? How could I be, independent on myself, not have to depend on anything at all? And what God is saying is, I want you to be dependent on me. But what we've constantly saw it throughout the time, if you look back to the ancient times, the Egyptians, they were all looking for immortality. And it was crazy because as I finished up with this, what God opened up to me is righteousness is just being right with God. How can we do this? Simply spend time with him, and he will direct you. He will give you wisdom, knowledge, understanding, insight, discretion, prudence, diligence, discipline, and strength. This is when you will release the reliance on man's approval and only seek God's presence. That is true immortality. So don't be stupid. Proverbs 12, the corresponding proverb, corresponding day. We've done 5 episodes today, back to back to back, all live, all produced just for you. And I want to thank you so much for listening. The greatest thing that you could ever do, greatest compliment you could give me is listen or watch like you're doing now. Comment, subscribe, and share it with your friends. If you want to experience the podcast live, we got the Vibe Room on July 23rd, and it is going to be unbelievable. We're going to have so much fun in Salt Lake City. It will be coming to Carlsbad soon. And I want to thank you for tuning into the podcast. We have these episodes, which is in the playlist, Wisdom in the Vibe. We also have You Have to Meet My Friends, where I call my friends randomly. I go live and call my friends randomly. It's hilarious. Then I also interview some of the most iconic people in the world. But I want to thank you for tuning into the podcast. I want to thank you for sharing it, for subscribing, and sending us comments and all the love that you do. It has been my honor, my pleasure, and probably the coolest project that I've ever done in my entire life. My name is Kelly Cardenas, and I'm officially off the hot seat. Peace, love, and soul.
Nothing more on my mind. I got two shines, so every day I grind. Work in the morning, work in the evening. We's achieving, cause we believing. It's for certain, we put the work in. We ain't stopped just because it's hurting. Right before your eyes, so it's coming to no surprise. The takeover is televised. Over and over and over again.